Hey guys, tonight we begin why you wouldn't survive a day in a pirate time. This isn't about the shiny, romanticized version you see in movies or video games. There are no clean decks, no neatly pressed uniforms, no comfortable beds. The reality of pirate life is harsh, unforgiving, and relentless. If you, right now, were thrown onto a pirate ship, you wouldn't last. Not for a week, not for a day, perhaps not even for a single hour. And the first, greatest, and most unyielding reason is the sea itself. The ocean is not a friend. It is not peaceful. It is not forgiving. It is endless, powerful, and utterly indifferent to human life. Imagine stepping onto a pirate ship for the first time. Behind you, the land disappears. The coast shrinks, the harbor fades, and the last trace of safety vanishes. All that remains is the horizon and the endless, unbroken expanse of water. Look left, waves. Look right, waves. Ahead, waves. Behind, waves. There is no escape, no shelter, no relief. The ocean is your cage, and it wants you broken. At first, it may look beautiful. The sunlight glimmers across the rolling waves. A gull cries overhead. The breeze carries a faint smell of salt and brine. But that beauty quickly fades when the ship begins to move. The pirate ships were small, fragile, and creaking wooden constructions. Every plank groaned under the weight of men, cannons, barrels, and rigging. Every rope stretched, every mast tilted and moaned with the wind. The ocean rocked the ship continuously, a constant up and down, side-to-side motion that no human body is meant to endure. Your stomach flips, your head pounds, your legs wobble. This is seasickness. And in pirate times, it was cruel, relentless, and often fatal for the weak. New recruits often retched for hours, sometimes days. Some never fully recovered. Pirates would mock them, call them names, toss them scraps of food they couldn't even hold down. A man who couldn't haul ropes or climb a mast was useless. And in pirate life, useless meant death. This is the first reason you wouldn't survive a single day. But let's say you manage the sickness. The sea still isn't done with you. The very air becomes an enemy. Salt is everywhere. In the wind, in the spray of the waves, in every breath you take, every wound, every scrape, every blister on your body burns with the sting of salt water. Your lips crack, your eyes water, your tongue dries and swells. Your clothes are soaked constantly, and your skin becomes raw, chafed, and infected. Fleas and lice thrive in these conditions, feeding on the men until they are maddened by the bites. Rats crawl across the deck, and below it, gnawing on scraps and sometimes fingers. The smell is unbearable. Rot, sweat, salt, mildew, vomit, and the smell of the men themselves, who rarely bathed. You would be suffocated by it all. And then there is the sun. In the Caribbean, along the coasts of the Americas, Africa, and the Indian Ocean, the waters where pirates roamed, the sun was merciless. At noon, It blazed down from directly overhead, turning the deck into a furnace. Your skin blisters. Your sweat pours, but does not cool you. The sails above trap the heat, reflecting it downward. Your eyes squint against the glare. Your hands blister when handling ropes. Your lips split. Your cheeks and nose burn red and peel. Pirates lived with this every day, darkened by years under the tropical sun. You would collapse in hours. And then the storms. Storms at sea are monsters. The first sign is always the sky, turning black and heavy. Clouds swelling like bruises. The wind shifts, whipping the sails until they crack. The waves grow taller and taller, each one stronger than the last, smashing the ship like it were made of paper. Rain lashes across your face, stinging like needles. Lightning cracks open the sky, so bright it blinds you. Thunder booms, shaking your bones. The ship groans, climbing the wave like a mountain, then plunging into the trough beyond. Barrels roll, ropes snap, sails thrash. The pirates scramble, calling orders, hauling ropes, tying knots, securing cannons. Their hands are hardened, their feet are sure. Your hands slip. You fall. Salt water rushes into every cut. The ocean surges over the deck and drags you down. Overboard in a storm means death, guaranteed. Even in calm weather, the sea offers no relief. The ship rocks, tilts, and groans endlessly. Below deck, men lie shoulder to shoulder, sweating, coughing, snoring, sick with seasickness or scurvy. The air is damp, heavy, and rancid with rot and mildew. Rats scurry over your feet. Fleas bite your ankles. You cannot sleep, you cannot rest. Day after day, night after night, the sea wears you down. Pirates also had to follow strict routines. Every day, men climbed the rigging, hauled ropes, scrubbed the deck, cleaned the hold, repaired sails, manned the cannons, and kept watch. There was no rest, no comfort, no pause. Every mistake could mean disaster. A mistied knot could tear a sail in a storm. A slip on the deck could send a man to a watery grave. You would fail. You would fall. You would be crushed before the day ended. Superstitions haunted every sailor. Black cats were good luck. A whistling wind was death. A crow flying overhead could mean misfortune. But, superstition or not, the sea itself was a law far stricter than any pirate code. It did not bend for you. It did not forgive. It did not care who you were. And if you were not strong, resilient, and lucky beyond measure, the ocean would claim you. And that, my friends, is why the first enemy of every pirate, and the first reason you would not survive a day in pirate times, is the sea itself. The endless horizon, the sickness, the sun, the storms, the constant motion, the lack of sleep, the dampness, the pests, the work, the danger. All of it conspires to destroy anyone not built for it. Most men could not endure. Most men died quietly, overboard, below deck, or simply from exhaustion. And you would be next. The sea alone may already have broken you. But even if you somehow manage to endure the rocking waves and the endless storms, your next enemy is far more personal. It is what you must eat and drink. Because, on a pirate ship, food and drink were not pleasures, they were punishments. They were torture disguised as survival. Forget the idea of meals as you know them today. There were no steaming plates, no fresh fruit, no clean glasses of water. Pirates ate only what they could store, steal, or salvage, and most of it was barely edible. The very sight and smell of their food would be enough to drive you to starvation. The main staple was a hard biscuit known as hardtack. Imagine flour, water, and a pinch of salt, baked until it was as hard as a brick. It was so dense, so tough, that it often broke teeth. To make it edible, pirates soaked it in whatever liquid they had at hand. Water, beer, or rum, softening it just enough to chew. But even then, it tasted like sawdust mixed with chalk. Worse still, these biscuits were almost always alive with insects. Stored for months in barrels, they became infested with weevils and beetles. Pirates would tap them on the table to knock the bugs out, but the truth was that most of the time you simply ate them along with the biscuit. Imagine that crunch. The bitterness of stale flour mixed with the crawling legs of insects between your teeth. To a starving man, it was just another bite of food. To you, it would be unbearable. The second staple was salted meat, usually beef or pork, packed in heavy barrels of salt. At first it might have tasted like something, but weeks or months at sea transformed it into something horrifying. The salt dried the meat to the texture of leather, stringy and nearly impossible to chew. Pirates had to soak it for hours just to soften it enough to cut, and often, when a barrel was opened, the meat was green with rot, crawling with maggots, and stinking of death. The smell alone could make you vomit, but pirates forced it down anyway, because hunger left no choice. Some men described it as chewing on old rope. Others said it was like eating boots. And yet they ate it every day. You would gag, spit it out, and starve while they swallowed it down because they had no choice. On the better days, when they were lucky, the crew made stews from dried peas or ship's biscuit mixed with meat. One was called peas porridge, a thick, lumpy paste of boiled peas that stank of rot and often carried worms. Another was lobscouse, a stew of whatever scraps could be thrown into a pot. Biscuits, salted meat, maybe onions if they were lucky. The smell was sour, the taste was foul, but the men devoured it all the same. That was the closest thing to variety. For you, every bite would be like swallowing poison. Fresh food existed only at the very start of a voyage, or after raiding a ship. Pirates gorged themselves on fruit, vegetables, and bread the moment they had them, because everyone knew they would not last. Bread molded in days, fruit rotted, vegetables shriveled. Meat spoiled fast in the tropical heat. After a week or two, it was gone, and then the slow torment began again, day after day, with only hardtack, salted meat, and foul porridge to sustain you. And then, the matter of drink. You might think pirates had the ocean to keep them alive, but seawater is poison. Drink it, and your body dehydrates faster than if you drank nothing at all. Fresh water was stored in wooden barrels, and within weeks it turned foul. Algae grew thick, a slimy film coated the top. Worms sometimes wriggled inside. The water stank like rot, sour and bitter. Pirates strained it through cloth to catch the filth, but it still tasted like death. And yet they drank it because thirst is stronger than disgust. You would gag on the first sip, but sooner or later you would drink, because your body would demand it. And then it would sicken you, filling your gut with cramps, vomiting, and worse. Because of this, pirates turned to alcohol. Beer and ale were carried at first, but they spoiled quickly. Rum, however, was plentiful, strong, and lasting. Every man was given a ration. Sometimes a pint of beer, sometimes a half pint of rum, often watered down into a drink they called grog. Rum dulled the taste of foul water, numbed the pain of wounds, and gave men the strength to keep working. But it also destroyed them. Daily drinking led to drunken accidents, brawls, knife fights, mutinies. Some pirates lived in a haze of drink, their minds gone, their livers failing. For you, unused to such heavy liquor, the rum alone would leave you sick, stumbling, and ruined. And then came the great curse of pirate diets. Scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C. It was the slow death that haunted every ship. At first, your gums would swell and bleed. Small cuts would fester instead of healing. Your legs would ache as if they were filled with lead. Then, your teeth would loosen and fall out. Your skin would turn pale, then bruise at the slightest touch. Old scars would open again. Your breath would stink of decay. In the final stages, your body would collapse. Entire crews wasted away, unable to move, their mouths bleeding, their limbs stiff. Some captains tried to fight it with citrus when they could find it, but most did not care. A sick man could be replaced. If you died of scurvy, you would be thrown overboard, your body sinking into the black water, and the ship would sail on without you. And sometimes the food simply ran out. Long voyages, storms, or bad luck left ships stranded with no supplies. Rations were cut smaller and smaller. Men chewed on leather belts, gnawed ropes, boiled shoe leather just to fill their bellies. Hunger drove them mad. Some sat in silence, wasting away. Others turned violent, stealing scraps, fighting their shipmates for crumbs. And when starvation reached its darkest depths, there are whispered tales of cannibalism. Not common, but not impossible. Imagine that hunger so fierce, that madness so deep, that even the flesh of a fallen crewmate seemed like salvation. Mealtimes themselves were miserable affairs. Pirates ate with dirty hands, often straight from communal barrels. No plates, no forks, no sense of hygiene. Just fingers, knives, or scraps of wood as spoons. Flies swarmed. Rats darted across the deck, stealing crumbs. Spoiled meat was carved, shared, swallowed. The smell of rancid food mixed with sweat, vomit, mildew, and human filth. Men coughed, spat, argued, sometimes fought as they ate, and all of it in the heat of the tropics, with no fresh air below deck. That was the atmosphere of every meal. And more than the body, food destroyed the spirit. A good meal could lift the men for a day. A bad one crushed them. Arguments broke out over rations, accusations of theft, suspicion that another man had been given more than his share. Morale shattered as quickly as barrels emptied. Every bite carried not just rot, but tension, suspicion, anger. The ship itself seemed to groan with the strain of hunger. Could you eat under that weight? Could you swallow while knowing the man beside you might stab you for a scrap? You would not. So, when you think of pirates drinking and feasting, picture the reality. Picture the teeth breaking on biscuits, the mouths filled with insects, the jaws aching from leathery meat, the bellies twisted with hunger. Picture the men staggering drunk on sour rum, their bodies collapsing from scurvy, their lips cracking as they drank slimy, worm-filled water. Picture the rats stealing food in the dark, the smell of rot filling the air, the hunger clawing at every stomach. And understand this: before the cannon fire, before the battles, before the treasure and the songs, food and drink alone would finish you. You would not last a day. And yet, as terrible as the food and drink were, they were only one enemy among many. If the sea didn't take you, and hunger didn't hollow you out, then the next thing waiting for you was far worse. Disease and injury were the constant companions of every pirate ship, and they did not forgive weakness. Picture the lower deck of a pirate vessel. It is dark, damp, and stinking of rot. Dozens of men are crammed shoulder to shoulder in hammocks or lying on the bare planks. The air is thick with the sour smell of sweat, mildew, and human waste. Rats scurry across the beams above, and cockroaches scatter when the lantern swings. Fleas and lice infest every blanket, every beard, every scalp. The ship itself feels alive with crawling things. If you tried to sleep here, the itching would keep you awake, your skin crawling, your nerves snapping. But after days of exhaustion, even in that filth, you would collapse. And in that filth, disease spread like wildfire. The most common was dysentery, a sickness born of foul water and unclean food. It began with cramps in the stomach, then endless waves of diarrhea, leaving a man weak and dehydrated. The stench of it filled the ship, and there was no escape. Buckets overflowed. Sick men could barely move. The disease could drag on for weeks, and it killed slowly, robbing men of strength until they simply faded away. If you caught it, you would not endure. Fevers were another constant. Malaria and yellow fever swept through crews in the tropics. One day you might feel fine. The next you would be shivering with chills, your body racked with heat, sweat pouring from your skin. Your eyes would turn yellow, your stomach ache, your mind cloud over with fever dreams. Pirates had no medicine, no doctors trained to heal such sickness. At best, someone might bleed you with a knife, or force you to swallow some bitter herbal concoction. Most times, they just laid you down and waited to see if you lived or died. And then there were the injuries. Life on a pirate ship was brutal even without battle. Ropes snapped, masts swung, barrels rolled across decks. A single slip on a wet plank could break bones, and with no hospitals, no clean bandages, no knowledge of infection, the smallest wound could be fatal. A splinter that pierced your hand could turn red, swell, and fester. A cut from a knife could blacken and stink within days. The flesh would rot, pus dripping, the pain unbearable. There were no antibiotics, no antiseptics, no painkillers. If infection set in, there was only one solution: amputation. Now imagine this. You cut your leg on a rusty nail, and it swells with infection. The ship's carpenter or surgeon's mate takes out a saw, heated in the fire, to dull the pain. 4 strong men hold you down. There is no anesthesia, no clean cloth, no morphine to dull the agony. The saw bites into your flesh, into your bone, while you scream until your voice breaks. The pain is white-hot, unbearable. And when it is done, when your leg is gone, you might live. Or you might die of shock or infection anyway. This was medicine at sea. This was survival. But the worst wounds came in battle. A musket ball tearing through your shoulder. A cannon splinter driving into your chest. A cutlass slicing open your arm. On land, you might be rushed to a surgeon. On a pirate ship, you were lucky if someone stuffed the wound with tar, wrapped it in dirty cloth, and hoped you didn't bleed out. Many didn't. The decks after battle were slick with blood, slippery with the bodies of the wounded. The groans and screams of men dying filled the night. Could you lie there, waiting for death, knowing no help would come? And still, sickness stalked even the strongest men. Tuberculosis, known then as consumption, left men coughing blood, their bodies wasting away. Typhus spread through lice and filth, burning men with fever until they collapsed. Plague sometimes struck ports, and ships carried it with them. One sick sailor could doom the entire crew. And there was no cure, no escape. Only the slow decline into weakness, pain, and death. Even the ocean itself brought sickness. The endless rocking caused seasickness that lasted not hours, but days, even weeks. Imagine vomiting until your stomach was empty. Then retching still, your body weak, your throat raw, your face pale. Some men never adapted. They spent every voyage sick, broken, unable to eat or drink, clinging to life by a thread. Could you stand it? Or would the sea itself drain you of strength before any enemy had the chance? And through it all, there was no comfort, no hospitals, no doctors as you know them today. Only barber surgeons with crude saws and blunt knives. Only dirty rags for bandages. Only rum to dull the pain. A broken arm, a deep cut, a fever. All of it could mean death. The men knew it. You would know it, and you would not last. So, when you think of pirates shouting, singing, clashing swords in wild battles, remember this truth. The real terror came not from the cannon fire, nor the musket balls, nor the storms. It came from the fever that burned at night, from the wound that festered with rot, from the cough that never stopped, from the simple splinter that killed. Disease and injury were the true reapers of pirate crews. And before long, they would claim you too. Because on a pirate ship, death was never far away. It was waiting in the water, in the air, in the food, in your own blood. And no matter how strong you thought you were, you would not survive a single day. And before you even think about facing an enemy ship or chasing treasure across the sea, you would first have to survive the cruelty of your own crew. Because on a pirate ship, punishment was not gentle, and justice was not kind. It was swift, merciless, and designed to break not just the body, but the spirit. The whip was the constant threat, a shadow that hung over every sailor. 9 ropes, each one knotted, some tipped with bits of iron or bone. When the captain or quartermaster ordered a lashing, the crew gathered to watch. There was no hiding from it, no looking away. The condemned man was tied to the mainmast, his shirt ripped from his back. The cat was dipped in brine to make the blows sting sharper, to make the wounds fester longer. Then the first strike came. The sound alone was enough to chill the blood. The crack of rope against flesh, followed by the sharp intake of breath as skin split open. The second blow cut deeper, tearing muscle. By the 10th, his back was a mass of red, skin peeled away in strips, blood soaking his trousers. Some men screamed until their voices broke. Others bit down on wood, their teeth cracking, refusing to give their tormentors the satisfaction of a cry. And when it was done, the salt air and sun worked like knives, burning every wound. You would not endure even one lash. They endured dozens. But the lash was only the beginning. For greater crimes, worse torments awaited. The most feared was keel hauling. Imagine being tied with ropes, your body dragged over the side of the ship into the cold, black water. The ocean fills your nose, your throat, your lungs. Panic seizes you, every breath choked off. You are dragged beneath the hull, where barnacles cling like razors. They tear into your flesh, carving your skin from your bones as the ship drags you along its length. Salt rushes into the wounds, stinging with white-hot fire. You claw at the ropes, but there is no escape. And then the sea itself tries to keep you, pressing down, pulling you deeper. When you are finally hauled up on the other side, coughing, bleeding, skin shredded and lungs burning, you are not the same man you were before. Most did not survive. Those who did bore scars that lasted until their final breath. If it were you dragged beneath that hull, you would not surface again. And sometimes, pirates punished by casting a man away. Marooning, a word that struck terror in every heart. To be marooned was to be abandoned, left on some desolate spit of land or rocky isle, far from ships and far from rescue. You would be given nothing but a pistol with a single shot, a flask of water, maybe a piece of bread. Then the ship would sail away, and you would be left standing on the sand, staring at the horizon. Days would pass beneath the sun, the heat burning your skin, your lips cracking. Hunger gnawed at your belly, thirst drove you mad. At night, the cries of seabirds and the crash of waves would be your only companions. Some men prayed, some raged, most went silent, broken, until they collapsed in the sand. And when the pistol lay in their hands, many chose to end it quickly rather than waste away. You, alone on that shore, would not last a day. For lesser crimes came crueler amusements. A thief might be tied to the mast and smeared with grease, left for rats to gnaw at him. A liar might have his ears cut, his nose slit, his face branded with hot iron. Sometimes a man was made to run the gauntlet, forced to walk between two lines of crewmen, each armed with ropes, sticks, or knives, beating him until he collapsed. Others were clapped in irons, locked in the dark, stinking bilge where rats and filth festered, where the stench of rot and waste choked every breath. Men chained, there came out pale, sick, and broken, if they came out at all. And always there was the noose. Hanging was the final justice, whether for betrayal, cowardice, or mutiny. The condemned was marched before the crew, rope looped around his neck, tied to the yardarm above. Sometimes it was quick, a drop, a snap, and silence. Other times, slower, crueler. The man kicked, struggled, gasped, his face turning purple, his tongue swollen, until at last he went still. His body was left swaying as the ship rocked, a reminder to every man aboard: obedience or death. Imagine the creak of the rope at night, the silhouette of a body twisting against the moonlight. Could you sleep with that shadow above you? Even when death was not dealt, the constant violence broke men. Fights erupted over food, over stolen rum, over insults shouted in drunken rage. Knives flashed, fists flew, blood spilled across the deck. Pirates were feared for their cruelty to others, but often they turned their fury on each other. A wrong look could mean a blade at your throat. A wrong word could mean blood on the planks. Living among them was to live in a world where violence was always only a heartbeat away. And punishment was not just pain of the flesh, it was fear. Fear that kept men in line. Fear that gnawed at the mind. Every order you followed carried that weight. Work too slow, and the whip would find you. Speak too freely, and the knife would silence you. Disagree with the captain, and the noose would tighten round your neck. It was not just the sea that trapped you. It was the constant knowledge that your life was never yours to keep. Now imagine your body, already broken by hunger, already weakened by sickness, forced to endure lash after lash, blow after blow, the ever-present threat of death hanging over you. The scars on your back would burn every time you bent to haul a rope. The fear in your heart would rise every time the quartermaster's gaze fell on you. You would lie awake at night, listening to the cries of the punished, the coughs of the dying, the whispers of men wondering who would be next. And so, before the cannons ever thundered, before the smoke of battle choked your lungs, the punishments of your own ship would have broken you. Not treasure, not glory, only the cat tearing your flesh, only the rope around your neck, only the silence of the island where you were left to die. This was the truth of pirate justice. And in such a world you would not endure, you would not survive. Not even for a day. And yet, even with hunger gnawing at your belly, sickness crawling in your blood, and the lash tearing at your back, the worst was still ahead of you. Because, sooner or later, every pirate ship met its true test. Battle. And it was here, in the smoke and thunder of combat, that you would truly understand why you would never survive a day in the age of pirates. The warning often came at dawn, a lookout's cry from the masthead, "Sail ho!" In an instant, the ship turned to chaos. Men scrambled to their stations, ropes whipped through the air, sails cracked in the wind. The quiet of the morning vanished, replaced by a rising storm of shouts and boots thudding across the deck. Your heart would pound as the enemy ship grew larger on the horizon, its masts tall, its cannons bristling. There was no time to prepare yourself, no time to breathe. The guns were run out. Imagine rows of heavy iron cannons, each weighing over a ton, dragged to the open ports by straining men. Barrels of powder were cracked open, black dust spilling everywhere, filling the air with a dry, acrid stench. Cannonballs were stacked, wads of rope and scrap packed tight. The gunners worked fast, their hands blackened, their faces already dripping with sweat. Every man knew what was coming, and the fear clung as heavy as the smell of powder. And then, the first shot, a roar like thunder, shaking the deck beneath your feet, deafening your ears. Smoke exploded outward, thick and choking, filling your lungs, burning your eyes. The recoil slammed the cannon back, men straining to catch it before it crushed them against the bulkhead. Across the gap of water, the enemy answered. Their shot screamed overhead, tearing through rigging, splintering wood. One cannonball smashed into the deck, splinters flying like daggers, cutting into flesh. A man fell beside you, his throat torn open, his blood hot on your hands. There was no space for hesitation. You would be ordered to haul ropes, to carry powder, to aim guns. Your body, already weak from hunger and fever, would shake under the weight. Your ears would ring, your hands blister, your chest burn with smoke. And always, the next shot came. Iron tearing wood, wood tearing flesh. Arms ripped away, legs shattered, bodies crushed into red pulp. Men screamed, cried out for mothers, for mercy, for God. But there was no mercy. Only more thunder, more smoke, more blood. And when the cannons had done their work, the ships drew close. Grappling hooks flew, ropes pulled taut, hulls slammed together. The order was given to board. Cutlass in hand, pistol at your belt, you would be shoved forward with the rest, across the gap onto the enemy deck. And here, the true horror began. Battle at sea was not neat or clean. It was chaos. Men hacking at each other in a storm of steel. A pistol shot at point-blank range, the powder burning your face. A cutlass flashing, biting deep into flesh. The crack of bones under a club. The wet thud of a blade carving into a man's chest. The deck slick with blood, slippery beneath your feet. The screams of the wounded drowned out by the clash of steel and the roar of men fighting for their lives. Could you raise your arm, weak and trembling, against a seasoned pirate hardened by years of violence? Could you face a man with madness in his eyes, his teeth bared, his blade hungry for your throat? You would falter, you would freeze, and in that heartbeat, the steel would find you. And even if you fought, even if you swung your blade with all the desperation of a cornered animal, the sights around you would unmake you. A man's skull split open, brains spilling on the planks. Another run through the gut, his intestines spilling out as he collapsed, screaming. A comrade beside you shot through the chest, choking on blood. These were not moments of heroism, but of horror. Victory did not bring peace. When pirates took a ship, they did not spare. The defeated crew was slaughtered or chained, their cargo stolen, their bodies left drifting in the sea. The stench of death clung for days, blood drying in the cracks of the deck. Even the victors were broken. Hands burned from the powder, clothes soaked in gore, faces hollow with exhaustion. For you, victory would mean nothing. You would be shaking, vomiting, trembling at the carnage around you, unable to eat, unable to sleep, haunted forever by what you had seen. And what of defeat? Defeat meant worse than death. If captured, pirates were hanged, marched in chains to the nearest port. They were paraded before crowds, their necks looped with rope, their bodies left swinging for days as warnings. You would feel the coarse rope bite your throat, the jeers of the crowd burning hotter than the sun. Your last sight would be the sky above, blue and endless, as the air was stolen from your lungs. Battle at sea was not glory. It was a nightmare of fire and steel, of smoke and blood. It was chaos so violent that even the strongest men trembled afterward, staring at their bloody hands in silence. You, already weakened by hunger, sickened by disease, scarred by punishment, would stand no chance. The roar of the guns would shatter your courage. The first splash of blood on your face would break your will, and the blade that found you would end your story in seconds. Because this was the truth of pirate life. Not adventure, not treasure, but the constant march toward death, whether by hunger, by sickness, by the lash, or by the steel of an enemy's blade. And in that storm of chaos, of smoke and screams, you would not survive, not even for a day. And when the thunder of guns at last faded, when the clash of steel fell silent, the real torment began. The aftermath of battle was worse than the fight itself. The deck was a butcher's yard. Blood pooled in the cracks of the planks, soaking boots, sticking to hands. The wounded lay writhing, screaming, clutching torn limbs. Some begged for water, some for mercy, some simply cried like children, their voices breaking as the pain grew too great. The surgeon, if there was one, worked in horror. He had no clean tools, no gentle methods. His knives were dull, his saws rusty, his hands trembling from exhaustion. There was no time for care, only speed. A man with a shattered arm was strapped down, wood jammed between his teeth to muffle the screams. The saw bit into bone, sparks of agony flashing through his body as his limb was hacked away. No anesthetic, no comfort, just the sound of steel against bone. The stench of blood and burned flesh when the stump was cauterized with a hot iron. Another, with a musket ball lodged deep in his belly, begged for relief, but none could save him. He groaned for hours, his eyes staring into nothing, until finally he fell silent. You, standing among this horror, would be undone. The smell alone would make you retch. Blood, sweat, powder, and the sickly sweet stench of opened bodies. Flies gathered already, buzzing hungrily around wounds, laying eggs in the raw flesh of the dying. Rats crept from the shadows below deck, bold, their whiskers twitching at the scent of death. The surgeon waved them off with bloody hands as he worked. And then came the burials. At sea, the dead could not be kept long. Their bodies swelled, stiffened, stank in the heat. They were sewn into hammocks, sometimes with a cannonball at their feet to weigh them down. A final prayer was muttered, though often hurried, half-hearted. The body was lifted, tilted, and slid into the ocean with a splash. You would watch as your comrades, men you had spoken to, men you had worked beside, men you had heard laughing just days before, vanished beneath the waves, claimed by the depths. The sea was their grave, and you would know, in your heart, it would soon be yours as well. The survivors bore scars that would never heal, eyes haunted by what they had seen, hands trembling too much to hold a rope steady, backs bent, bones broken, spirits crushed. And yet there was no time for grief. The ship sailed on, orders were barked, sails repaired, guns cleaned. Life at sea did not stop, not even for death, and you would be expected to rise, to work, to carry on, no matter what horrors still echoed in your mind. But even if you survived the battle and the wounds, there was still the shadow of capture. Every pirate lived with the knowledge that the noose waited for him. The governments of the world had no mercy for men who robbed their ships, who killed their sailors. If caught, you would be chained, marched into court, condemned before you could even speak. Execution day was spectacle. Crowds gathered, jeering, laughing, throwing stones as you stumbled to the gallows. The rope would be looped tight around your neck, the coarse fibers scratching your skin. Your legs would shake, your breath would quicken, the trap would fall. and the world would vanish into darkness. Some pirates begged, some cursed, some laughed at death, spitting their last words at the sky. But all met the same fate, their bodies swaying, their faces twisted, their tongues swollen, their corpses left hanging as warnings for days. Children pointed, birds pecked at the remains, and the message was clear. This is what happens to those who live the pirate's life. And yet, even if you were never caught, never hanged, never cut down in battle, the sea itself would claim you slowly. The constant hunger, the sickness, the punishment, the endless fear, it all ground men into dust. Their teeth rotted to black stumps. Their hair fell out. Their skin sagged over thin bones. Coughs never left them. Fevers burned them. Nightmares haunted their sleep. Men who once stood strong and wild became husks, worn out before their time, old at 30, broken by 40, buried nameless in the deep before 50. This was pirate life. Not the adventure sung in taverns, not the glory painted in stories, but misery, suffering, cruelty, and despair. For every treasure chest unearthed, 100 men rotted in chains, bled beneath the whip, drowned in the sea, or hung from the gallows. And you, soft, untested, unprepared, would not last an hour among them. You would not endure the hunger, the sickness, the lash, the battle, the aftermath, the slow death of the soul. Because the truth, the simple truth, is this: you would not survive a day in the time of pirates. And so, when we look back on the age of pirates, it is not the songs, or the treasure maps, or the painted stories that we must remember, but the truth. A truth of hunger gnawing like a rat in your belly, of sickness rotting your flesh, while the sea rocked you into fevered dreams, of punishments that tore the skin from your back, that left you bleeding, broken, and shamed before your crew, of battles where thunder and steel split the sky, where the smoke choked your lungs, where blood ran across the deck like rain, of the aftermath the surgeons saw, the burials at sea, the endless silence of men swallowed by the waves. And if the sea did not claim you, the noose would. Cities lined with gallows, ropes swaying in the wind, corpses left to rot as a warning to every soul who dared to follow the black flag. This was not freedom. This was not glory. It was death, certain and merciless. The truth is simple. You would not survive a day in the age of pirates. Your body would give out, your spirit would collapse, your fear would consume you. The sea is not kind, the crew is not gentle, and the world was not built for mercy. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember, the stories of pirates are only safe in books and dreams. In reality, the salt air would sting your lungs, the whip would tear your skin, and the sea would take you as it took so many before. And if you close your eyes now, listen to the rhythm of your breath. You may hear it. The creak of wood, the crash of waves, the distant cry of gulls. The sea whispers still, calling out with its ancient voice. But it does not call you to glory. It calls you to remember. Why? Because you would not survive. Not a week, not a day, not even a single night beneath the black flag. Sleep well, dreamer. Stay on land.